Good afternoon. I want to wish everyone a Happy New Year and welcome back to the New York State Capitol for the start of another legislative session. I am New York State Senator and Senate Republican Leader Rob Ortt, and I am very proud to stand here with my colleagues in the Senate Republican Conference to talk about our agenda and the rollout of our agenda, which we have called Liberate New York. And I think that's appropriate to liberate this state from the far left one-party rule that has taken over the last several years, and particularly liberate it from the far left, out-of-touch policies that the Democrats in the state Senate, the state Assembly, and the governor have enacted in the last several years. And we're going to talk about some of those specifics, but I also tend to think that our conference and our party, there's a lot of issues and things change over time. But one thing that I think one core issue, core tenet, core belief in our conference and in our party is the idea of personal freedom, that we should defend. We are the defenders of individual liberty, individual freedom to allow New Yorkers to live their lives as they see fit in a safe way with more money in their pockets to determine how they want to live, how they want to run their business, how they want to raise their families under the law of the state of New York and the Constitution of the United States. I think that is a tenet regardless of where you're from. And in the state of New York, if you are a Republican, and quite frankly, even if you're not a Republican, I think if you're an American, that is something that I think crosses party lines, the idea of liberty, that is what this country was founded on. But I firmly believe that in this Capitol, one party defends that on a daily basis, and one party has continued to enact policies that have restricted that liberty and those freedoms, whether it's economic policy, whether it is letting criminals run amok and supporting those who would harm us, whether it's undermining the Constitution and federal law. The Democrats have done that. We're going to go over that here. From Brooklyn to Buffalo this past election cycle, New Yorkers spoke very loudly, and you're going to hear from Senator Steve Chan, who was elected this past November, a Republican in the borough of Brooklyn. You know, we often think of New York City as sort of a bastion of far-left Democrat elected officials, and yet Steve, a former NYPD sergeant, a Marine, won election going away, not even close in a landslide. And that's because of all the great work he put in, but it's also because the ground was laid by Democrats' far-left policies that allowed Steve to talk about the issues that we're going to talk about here today. One of the issues that you're going to hear a lot about over the next several months, you've already heard a lot about it, you're going to hear a lot about it tomorrow from the governor, is the idea of affordability, the word affordability. It's going to be talked about ad nauseum. Now, very shortly, you're going to hear from my colleague, our housing ranker and our conference chair, Senator Pam Helming, about some of our policies related to affordability around housing, around agriculture, food prices, all those things. But make no mistake about it, the Democrats have passed policies the last several years that have made New York State less affordable. No matter what they want to say about $300 rebate checks or capping insulin prices, at the very time that they have tried or tout to do that, they have passed numerous policies that have increased the price of food here in New York, that has increased the cost for New Yorkers to heat their homes, to put gas in their cars. We're talking about recently this ridiculous congestion pricing scheme. So at the same time the governor's handing out $300 or $500 checks, people are going to be paying $9 just to go into Manhattan. So you have to look at the totality, and the totality is very clear. The Democrats have passed, by design, laws that have made New York less affordable. Now, if you're very wealthy, you probably don't really feel it. That's why many of their constituents in Manhattan and parts of Westchester, they haven't gone anywhere. And they always say, well, no one's leaving my district. I can tell you most of my colleagues have experienced the exodus of constituents, of business, of employers, of employees, of retirees of the next generation of our workforce. They are leaving this state in droves because Democrats have made this state less free and less affordable. Crime. You'll hear from Senator Chan specifically on this issue. We could look at just over the new year. We saw a CEO from a healthcare organization assassinated in the street on his way to a meeting at 6:30 or whatever it was in the morning. We saw a woman who fell asleep on a subway car and was lit on fire and burned to death. When the people behind me say that immigrants all belong here, that person that lit that woman on fire had no damn business in this state or in this country. That woman is dead because he was here. That woman is dead because of the failure of federal Democrat border policy and sanctuary city policy here in New York, period. That is why that woman is dead, and because he decided to light her on fire. I'm not going to stand up and say that person belongs here, and anybody who does, that should tell you very clearly where they are on this issue. We saw a man pushed in front of the subway while he was waiting for the train to arrive, on his phone from behind. Now, I believe he is going to survive, or he is alive, with significant injuries. The videos are horrible, but this has been going on for months, if not years. And we're told by Janno Lieber and the governor that this is all a figment of your imagination. Crime is down. Violent crime is down. Look it. We're used to elected officials, sadly, not being honest with the public. But this is a new level of dishonesty. I used the other day that there was some of the members of the media will remember Baghdad Bob in the Iraq War. You know, for several days he was out there, the representative of Saddam Hussein's government, telling everybody they had control of the country, even as U.S. tanks were rolling in on the airport. That's where we are with Kathy Hochul and Janno Lieber. They are trying to convince New Yorkers, gaslight them, and tell them that everything is fine. Everything is not fine. Janno Lieber should be relieved or resign. And I believe the voters are going to relieve Kathy Hochul in 2026, partly because of her refusal to acknowledge and do anything about the crime crisis here in the state of New York. And lastly, you're going to hear a lot today about elections reform. Democrats do this every year. My colleagues across the aisle roll out a new package of election reforms. I'm getting to the point, I don't mean to be cynical, but I'm getting to the point where I think that their real goal is just to ultimately get to where they just vote for you. Because I don't know how much easier we can make it to vote in New York. You have early voting, we have no excuse absentee voting. Obviously, if you wanted to, if you're old-fashioned like me, you can vote on election day. But the reality is, other than a federal holiday, making election day a holiday, which some people in President Trump's administration have talked about, it is very easy to vote in New York. But you know what my colleagues never talk about? And what will absolutely not be in their package today about election reforms? Voter ID. Securing our elections, even as we have over 200,000 people here in the state illegally, even as we have our colleagues across the aisle push in the city of New York for illegal immigrants to vote in this state. Nowhere are any Democrats talking about voter ID. The numbers on this don't lie. The public overwhelmingly supports voter ID. In a day and age where you need ID to do so many nominal, menial things, the most sacred right here in the state, in our country, and we act like voter ID is, you can't do that. That's voter suppression. Every bill that I know of that calls for voter ID, you'd either be able to allow to vote by sworn affidavit. I have a bill that would actually give you an ID. If you want an ID, we will give you a non-driver's license ID for voting purposes, free of charge, because we believe that if you want to vote, you can vote. But don't tell me that people don't have ID in 2025. I promise you, most people, if not every person showing up to vote, has an identification and a way to prove they are who they say they are. And we should require that in this state and across this country. I believe that our partners in the federal government coming in January 20th are going to push for a national voter ID movement. or a National Voter ID Act. We'll see where that goes. But you're going to hear from Senator Mark Walczyk, our ranker on elections, about our bill and our push to secure our elections and make sure that New Yorkers know they're safe, secure, there's integrity behind them. Yes, you can vote early, but you should know who's voting early. You should know who's voting on Election Day, and you should know who's casting those absentee ballots, and they are who they say they are. We're very excited, not only for our agenda, but obviously to work with President Trump's administration coming up starting next week. And our conference, I know, stands ready to work with people like Lee Zeldin at the EPA and others to enact President Trump's agenda and hopefully make New York safer, make New York more affordable, make New York more energy independent, and make New York a sanctuary for New Yorkers and not for people who want to come here and do us harm. And with that, I want to call up a colleague of mine, our conference chair, our ranker on housing, someone who's talked about affordability and who, by the way, has put forward bills and policies that actually would make New York more affordable, from our farms to our grocery stores to our gas stations to our kitchen tables. And that's my good friend and colleague, Senator Pam Helming.
Thank you, Leader Ort. Happy New Year, everyone. I want to start out by saying that under Leader Ort's leadership, our conference has always been focused on making our state safer and more affordable for New Yorkers across the state. And again, this legislative session, we will be relentless in our pursuit of the changes that are needed to accomplish this. Now, if you were here last week for the opening day of Senate session, you may have heard some of the remarks of Lieutenant Governor. Something that he said really stuck with me, and I want to share that. The Lieutenant Governor mentioned how important it is that as elected leaders, that we come to the Senate floor prepared to govern, not to campaign, not to play partisan politics. You know what I was doing as he was saying those words? I was looking directly across the aisle at the majority members, hoping that they were paying attention, that they were hearing what he was saying. Because under one-party rule in New York State, it's the Democrats, the party that the Lieutenant Governor belongs to, who ultimately controls which bills come to the floor and how New Yorkers' hard-earned tax dollars are actually spent. Today, our Republican conference is sharing our comprehensive common sense plan to turn this state around, to liberate New York. Again, I hope my colleagues across the aisle are paying attention. A Siena poll that was released in December showed that over 60% of New Yorkers feel affordability is their #1 concern. In our Senate Republican plan, we tackle every single major issue associated with affordability. We offer solutions that include a pro-housing package designed to help more people achieve the American dream of home ownership, relief for working people and retirees by lowering the middle-class tax, rejecting costly unfunded mandates, making health care, elder care, and child care more affordable. We have plans to support business, agriculture, and job opportunities that include improving vital infrastructure that's been let go for years, incentivizing made in America, produced in New York State, requiring the government, not our businesses and not our family farms, repaying the state's unemployment insurance debt, and streamlining unnecessary red tape by requiring the state to repeal one regulation for every new regulation it passes. We propose creating safe, affordable, and reliable energy choices. Choices because in our diverse state, this one-size-fits-all approach does not work. And speaking of choices for energy, that includes nuclear energy that currently produces 47% of our state's clean energy. And in response to concerns from our constituents, our school districts, and our home builders, we propose pausing the electric school bus mandate and the all-electric buildings requirements until realistic solutions are developed and there is infrastructure in place. In just one area of my district in Ontario County, we have over 500 homes where the developers are ready to break ground. The only thing holding them up is we don't have the energy capacity that they need. That's crazy. We, the Senate Republican Conference, we are determined to make New York State the place where people want to live, not where they want to escape from. And the Republican Conference, we all stand here ready to work with Governor Hochul and our colleagues in both houses to make our state safer and more affordable. Thank you, Leader Ort.
Thank you very much, Senator. Thank you, Senator Helming. You know, the senator mentioned something. Lieutenant Governor was obviously in our chamber, and he mentioned hopes and dreams. And I said this on the floor. You know, unfortunately, we all know hopes and dreams usually cost money. And we've made it more expensive to pursue those hopes and dreams in New York, which is why people are pursuing their hopes and dreams in other states. And that needs to change. That needs to change. And under Senator Helming's view that you heard outlined, under our view, I think that would change if we had partners on the other side to help enact those policies. Next up, I want to call up a new member of our conference, someone who may be new to you, but he won't be. He was just elected this November. He is a former NYPD sergeant. He is a Marine. There's no such thing as a former Marine. There's just a Marine. And maybe there's no such thing as a former NYPD sergeant. I don't know. But he is someone, he is the first Asian American Republican state senator. And more importantly, maybe most importantly, this is his first run for public office. I doubt he even ever thought years ago that he would run for public office. But because things have gotten so bad in the city of New York, where he used to patrol to help keep people safe, he took that oath once upon a time to protect and serve, and that is not an oath that ended when he took off his uniform. And I believe he will continue to protect and serve in his role as Senator Steve Chan. So with proper applause, I want to call up my new colleague, Senator Steve Chan.
Hey, thank you, everyone. Thank you. Thank you for all the kind words, Leader. So why am I here today? How did I get elected as a New York State Senator? And how, as Leader Ort mentioned, I'm the first Asian Republican New York State Senator in the history of New York State. And why is that? You guys notice that I'm the only Asian standing here. The point is, it's perfectly fine to be a Republican. There is no shame. When I walk my daughter's dogs, we found a dog about 6 years ago, my cops, they found a dog tied up in the projects. I brought him home. They love each other. When I walk that dog, it takes me about 1-2 hours to go around the block because I'm talking to the neighbors. Neighbors of all descents, neighbors, old Italians, Chinese people, Hispanics, Eastern Europeans, we talk. And all I'm doing is bringing their voice to Albany. The same conversation that we would have in the streets about crime, about how we've seen the best of times and the worst of times in South Brooklyn. We've seen what it's like to be able to walk around 2 o'clock in the morning, to take the train 3 o'clock in the morning without being disturbed, without being in danger. We brought that conversation to Albany. We talked about how the neighborhood has changed, and as we speak right now, there are illegal scooters, usually ridden by undocumented migrants, flying down the sidewalks to where my kids, my wife, has to look both ways before crossing a pedestrian sidewalk. And that's just the quality of life. I have never seen so much broken glass on the sideways. Down in my neighborhood, it's 3 beers and it's stupid time. Who thought it was a great idea to let everybody drink in the street? Who thought it was a great idea to let all the criminals out of the jails? So now we have jails that are 75% empty, but now the mayor's telling us, oh, we have an unexplained increase of homeless people that must find shelters. Well, those are your homeless people right there. They're the people that they've been letting out of jail for the last 5-6 years. Who thought it was a great idea to just let career criminals out of jail with no recourse when they get locked up, so that they're out there free to commit more violent crimes again? Every day we read about people getting stabbed, getting pushed into the subway tracks, getting burned, getting run over with no recourse. There's a constituent of mine, her father got ran over by one of these illegal scooters and subsequently died as a result of his injuries. That driver of that scooter is probably going to get off scot-free, and I am going to do something about that. So why am I here? During the course of my campaign, while my opponent from the far left talked about how I'm a communist, the United States Marine who went to battle for the United States of America, I'm the communist. The NYPD police sergeant who ran around the streets for 27 years, I'm the communist. So while she's busy calling me a communist, I'm busy asking the neighbors, what do you want me to tell Albany? What do you want me to tell the media? What do you want me to tell the people of the state of New York? And it's always the same from corner to corner, every block. There's about 500 blocks in my district, and I know it like the palm of my hand. I know my district. They say it's about 250, 300,000 people. The better number is 500,000, counting the undocumented migrants. Because when I go outside into the sidewalk, most people that I come across are undocumented. So it's always the same. The voice is, tell them we want to stop the crime. We want to adjust bail reform. We want to keep the bad guys in jail. We want to feel safe. My constituents are scared to take the subways. My constituents are scared to even drive because a lot of cars out there don't have insurance. My constituents are afraid for their children, their mothers, their family, and their friends. So with the help of my colleagues, my new colleagues in the conference, one of our top priorities for this session in Albany is to address crime, public safety, which are interrelated with the sanctuary status. Who thought it was a great idea to open the border? You know what? Why didn't the Japanese just drop their guns and walk across the border in World War II? That would have been the solution, right? So we are being invaded. We are being invaded. My wife from Malaysia, she has 2 sisters and 1 brother waiting 14 years for an immigration visa. Why wouldn't I just tell her, hey, tell your siblings to go to Mexico and walk across the border? There's your answer to immigration, right? Because we do things the right way. I am an immigrant. I have Hispanic friends who are immigrants, who are fed up with this nonsense of this sanctuary city. They came here, they worked. They don't want any pity. They don't want any sympathy. They got it. They say, you know what, Steve? We did it. We got it. We don't need anybody to take care of us. And likewise, I'm the same way. We don't need that. I don't believe in sanctuary city. Let's shut our borders. Let's take care of our own veterans, our own elderly, our own needy, our own homeless. Let's take care of those people before we take care of everybody else's problems around the world. So I am here to bring the voice of South Brooklyn. It wasn't hard. It wasn't hard to tell the neighbors, what do you want me to bring up there? And they say, this is what we want you to bring up there, public safety. So while my opponent was busy calling me a communist, I was busy asking my neighbors, what are you not happy about? I just brought that corner conversation, the dog walking conversation, I just brought it up here to Albany. Thank you very much. With that, I would like to introduce my colleague.
Well, you can see why he won. Right? I mean, who's gonna top that, right? We're very happy to have him. Yeah, every district, every part of the state has like an attitude. Obviously, South Brooklyn has an attitude. We're very happy to. We could use it. We're happy to have it, and looking forward to working with Senator Chan. You know, he mentioned something that was interesting about you're not looking for sympathy. You're not looking for. You know what people who come here are looking for? They're looking for U.S. citizenship. That's what they're looking for, because that's the gold standard of citizenship in the world, and that comes with freedom. It comes with the protection of the Constitution. That's why people come here. They don't want pity, they want citizenship. Our own government undermines that idea with open borders policies and sanctuary cities policies. It undermines and tells people, forget citizenship, just get here, get the handout, get the gift card, stand in line, live in a shelter, you'll be a second-class citizen for most of your life, but you're here. And that misses the whole point of why people like Steve's family came here to begin with. And we got to remind ourselves that, obviously, and the people who want to be here. At this time, I want to call up someone who I also want to welcome, not to the conference, but back to the conference. Senator Walczyk, like myself, like Senator Ashby, like Senator Steck, like Senator Chan, served his country and continues to serve his country, and recently returned from a deployment overseas with his Army National Guard unit. He is a great colleague of mine, an energetic colleague. You may have forgotten him last session. I promise you he will do everything he can to remind you that he is back early in this session. But he is a great fighter. I think he refers to his district as the front yard of America, someone who's up there on the Canadian border. He is going to talk about elections and specifically voter ID and some other items as part of our agenda. So please welcome up Senator Mark Walczyk.
Boy, it's good to be back. So for the members of the press corps, check out the Elections Committee agenda and some of the process. There's your tidbit today for how those bills are making it to the floor. Lady Liberty is not just situated in the harbor. She also sits as a symbol on New York State's seal, on New York State's flag. She holds the Staff of Liberty and the Phagrian cap above that staff. And these are symbols that our Democratic colleagues have forgotten. Not only that, they've forgotten the very roots of our Constitution, the same Constitution that they raised their right hand and swore to uphold last week in the Senate chamber. They're already forgetting the roots of that Constitution in their proposals that they're bringing to the floor on the very first day of business in the New York State Senate. So how do you liberate New York? You empower the voice of New York's citizens. New Yorkers deserve to feel confident that their vote is secret, that their vote is secured, and that it is not canceled out by any illegitimate ballots. It's time now to enact voter ID in New York State. If you caught the Gallup poll from this fall, 84% of Americans, I say that again, 84%. Everybody talks about the politics of division, how we can't agree on things. 84% of Americans, I challenge you to find anything else that polls that high, say we need voter ID laws. New Yorkers are asking why Democrats are so opposed to such a common sense policy, and so am I. You can't buy a beer or drive a car without an ID. And as the leader pointed out, with 200,000 non-citizens in New York and no voter ID requirement in this state, New Yorkers are wondering why Democrats won't enact voter ID. They'll tell you things like it's suppression. But we know what the results were in Georgia in 2022. Not only did it not suppress the vote, there was record turnout, but statewide they elected a Democrat to the federal U.S. Senate. So this isn't a partisan issue, and it polls high no matter what party you're talking about. They say fraud is minimal. Well, which amount of fraud are they ready to accept in our elections? Tell me which one of my constituents' votes do the Democrats want canceled by an illegitimate ballot? Point it out to me. How much fraud do we want to accept? I say that number is 0, and voter ID will help us with that cause. Murder, thank you, yeah, I appreciate it. So listen, murder, while it's terrible and getting a lot of headlines and moving up in New York State, is still relatively minimal. We don't accept that murder is okay in New York State. Neither is fraud in our elections. It degrades voters' faith in our entire electoral system. Voter ID is done in 36 states. Talk about supermajorities. It's proven non-discriminatory. It instills confidence in the voters. It safeguards our republic and those principles that are on our seal and in our Constitution, and it is time to enact voter ID in the state of New York. Thanks very much.
Well, thank you, Senator Walczyk, Senator Chan, Senator Helming, and all my colleagues who are here today for our agenda rollout and to talk about these issues. Look, we've been talking about them, it seems like, for a very long time. If you look at the fact that our conference continues to grow, grew this last cycle, Senator Chan obviously was the vote that ended the Democratic supermajority here in the New York State Senate. I'm very proud of the members who are behind me. I'm very proud to go into battle, to do the work of the people of New York with these members who are behind me, and I'm proud to serve as their conference leader.